CBS News legal contributor Rebecca Roiphe is here with me in studio to digest all of this. Good morning. So these charges, as we talk about the bigger political climate, come as President Trump explicitly says publicly that the DOJ has, quote, has to act fast, end quote, in investigating his political opponents. How much does that come into play here?
Yeah, Errol, I mean, it's really hard to overemphasize at this point the gravity of this situation. American prosecutors, federal prosecutors, the DOJ is supposed to be an independent, apolitical body that's essential to preserve democratic values precisely for the reasons we see playing out right here. It's not just Comey, it's any person who dares to stand up to the president has to now fear that he can use this extremely powerful arm to come after them. And that is completely inconsistent with the rule of law and with democracy itself.
And President Trump has also targeted Letitia James, Adam Schiff, people who have investigated him specifically. What's also interesting is that acting U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan was the only prosecutor to sign the charging documents. How unusual is that, and how much does that tell us?
It is extremely unusual. And I mean, I think that the line prosecutors decided that there's evidence that the line prosecutors came forward and decided that this was too weak a case to bring. And it looks like then refused to go into the grand jury in protest, and that she had to, again, these are, inferences that I'm making, that she had to go in there by herself. And I think it is also important to note that she herself has no background as a prosecutor. And so she doesn't, the norms and traditions of this office are what protect its apolitical status. And so she, as a political appointee and somebody handpicked by Trump, going in there tells us something. It sends a warning shot, really, across the Department of Justice itself, that if you as a line prosecutor decide that the facts and the law are not supporting this prosecution, somebody could come in from, some person who is closer to President Trump and just bring those charges on their own. So I think that is a sign that this is a weak case, or at least that the line prosecutors decided it was a weak case.
The timing is also interesting. She's fresh on the job, and this was days before the statute of limitations ran out on the alleged crimes. Even if Comey is eventually cleared, though, what lasting impact might this have?
I think it has it will be hard to recover from this moment. I think that we have had, at time and again, at least since Watergate, every single attorney general and every single president has respected this line, this protected this line, the independence of federal prosecutors. And having breached that, I think it will take some time before we can go back.
Okay, we're going to watch this very closely. Rebecca, great to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Nice seeing you too.
Joining me now is CBS News legal contributor Caroline Polisi. Caroline, so what will prosecutors and Comey's lawyers argue?
Yeah, well, prosecutors, as we know, have charged 2 counts, making a false statement in that congressional testimony, and then obstruction of a congressional investigation. And basically what they have to prove is that Comey made this statement knowingly, that he lied knowingly. And it's a little complicated. It's nuanced what exactly we're talking about here, but essentially it's that 2020 testimony referring back to something that happened in 2017, a leak from his deputy, Andy McCabe, to the Wall Street Journal. So it's a little bit complicated. We might have to parse some words here, but I think the defense, the first motion you will see by the defense is one for a selective and or vindictive prosecution based on that Truth Social post that Trump made prior to this indictment, and then basically a congratulations post after. By all accounts, it does appear that he couldn't find any prosecutor to prosecute this case that was in the office prior, so he installed somebody from the inside that was willing to do this. As Scott noted, she's been on the job since Monday. She has never prosecuted a case before, and there isn't. It's shocking that there's not a single assistant United States attorney in that office. There are many in that office that would not sign on to this case. Very unusual for the acting United States attorney to present a case to the grand jury and to be the one to sign that indictment.
Yeah, very unusual indeed. Remind me, you and I were talking about this earlier, how a grand jury makes a decision as to whether or not to indict someone. The bar is incredibly low.
Yeah, that's right. We've all heard that old adage, you can indict a ham sandwich, because it is quite easy to obtain a grand jury indictment. And that's because it is the lowest standard we have in the criminal law. It's just whether you move forward with an indictment not beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the standard we always hear in a criminal case. That's to actually convict. But in the grand jury, it's just probable cause. However, the ethical obligation of prosecutors are not to move forward with an indictment unless they believe that the evidence is in fact strong enough to not only obtain a conviction, but maintain one on appeal at that higher level of beyond a reasonable doubt. So you go to the grand jury, it's a lower standard of probable cause, but you have to have faith that you have enough evidence. And there's been some reporting that others in that office did not feel that ethically they could in good faith go to the grand jury because there was not enough evidence to meet that higher threshold.
All right, so he's set to be arraigned next month, Comey. How long is this likely to take?
It can move pretty quickly. I don't know if you've seen this indictment. It's very bare bones. It's not that complicated. It's one statement. The reporting suggests that there was another statement that was presented to the grand jury. They voted no bill on that one. So we're just talking about one statement, again, which we can sort of glean by how it's phrased, has to do with the leaking of information and or the authorization of the leaking of information way back in 2016, 2017. So, I would note the IG, actually the internal watchdog of the DOJ, looked into this issue, decided not to move forward. So what happens now is an exchange of information. We'll get to see sort of what the evidence is. He will, plead not guilty, just like every other defendant. He will be let go on bail pending the trial, and we could see a trial pretty, within the year. But there will be, trust me, Vlad, there will be many emotion to get to prior to this trial.
And just before you go, Caroline, I mean, the statute of limitations was set to expire on this. Is that why some believe that the president was pressuring the U.S. attorney to bring this case before that statute of limitations was over?
Absolutely. It seems pretty clear. That's just another red flag about this case. 5 years, this case has been languishing. It's been run up the flagpole multiple times by multiple prosecutors, all of whom have declined based on the evidence not to move forward with the prosecution. This got in under the wire. And I think this dramatic removal of the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, and then this appointment of somebody new who would indict this case, yes, by all accounts, that indicates, that something drastic needed to be done to get in under the wire of the statute of limitations.
All right, Caroline, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Breaking news, former FBI Director James Comey has been indicted. A U.S. official tells CBS News he's been charged with one count of making false statements and another count of obstruction of justice. We want to get right to Scott Frederickson, defense attorney and former federal prosecutor. So, Scott, what do these charges mean, and what specifically are they referring to?
Well, reports are that Mr. Comey has been charged by a grand jury sitting in Alexandria, Virginia, in the Eastern District of Virginia, with counts of making a false statement to the Senate investigating the Russiagate matter, and also one count of obstruction of justice.
So charges are one thing. How likely do you think this will end up in the hands of a jury?
Well, I think there's a legitimate, serious question whether this ever gets to a jury, given, the recent circumstances, which are just unavoidable. We had a very experienced veteran U.S. attorney appointed by President Trump who determined there was insufficient evidence to indict Mr. Comey, and he was forced out. In his place is a new acting U.S. Attorney, Lindsay Halligan, who has a grand total of zero prosecutorial experience, zero experience in the criminal law. She comes to this job from her position as an aide to Mr. Trump. President Trump, as we know, demanded that Comey be indicted. So, yes, this is going to get to a judge, and whether it gets to a jury is a legitimate question.
Now, Trump has been putting pressure on Attorney General Pam Bondi to go after his enemies when it comes to these different types of charges. He also mentioned Senator Adam Schiff from California. I'm curious if you think that this is just the beginning.
It does appear that this is just the beginning, and that's a good observation on your part. Historically, this has never been done before. The White House has been walled off from the Department of Justice. We don't historically prosecute people based on political, retribution, revenge, or otherwise. So we may expect further indictments. The president wants Senator Schiff from California indicted, and wants Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, indicted, and it goes on. People who he perceives as his enemy. So this may be the first of more to come from this district.
I want to put up Pam Bondi's statement here. She released just moments ago. She said, "No one is above the law. Today's indictment reflects this Department of Justice's commitment to holding those who abuse positions of power accountable for misleading the American people. We will follow the facts in this case." So, sir, do you believe the law is on her side?
Well, that's to be determined. I mean, that's a very general statement she makes. It's applicable to any case that gets indicted. No one is above the law. And, I think the concern, if I were in her shoes, is that if a judge on the motions in this case determines that this case was brought for political reasons without sufficient evidence, then there's potentially a very high price to be paid. And that will go all the way up to the Attorney General, as well as the Deputy Attorney General, as well as his acting U.S. Attorney. So, one thing we can look for initially in the presentation and the arraignment of Mr. Comey is who on behalf of the government steps up and is representing the government here, because apparently the experienced prosecutor in the office said there wasn't enough evidence. So, I understand what the Attorney General has said there. She's right. No one's above the law. But that also means if the prosecutors violate the law and bringing a case that had no business being brought, then they're the ones that are going to be behind the 8 ball.
I just want to echo something that you brought up earlier in this interview, is that something like this is unprecedented, this type of case, a president putting pressure on an attorney general to go after people that he deems as his enemies. Can you go into that one more time, sir, and just how unusual this type of case is?
This goes to a fundamental building block of democracy, where the power to charge someone criminally in the United States is always exercised by professional prosecutors. The Department of Justice historically has taken pains to isolate itself, to wall off the President of the United States. So there's no political pressure ever exerted on the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, the line assistant U.S. attorneys to bring this case or not to bring a certain case. And it appears that wall has been fully breached. And based on reports, it appears that this new acting U.S. attorney, no experience as a prosecutor, is taking direction from the President of the United States. Never happened before.
What are you going to be looking for in the next couple of days with this?
Well, I think we're going to see some explosive, arguments right out of the box. And I think what I'm going to be looking for is when this gets to the judge who's appointed to handle this case in the Alexandria Division, I suspect we're going to see that judge exercise some very strong supervision, given the fact that the U.S. attorney in his district, who was an experienced prosecutor, respected prosecutor by the judges in that district, was forced out when apparently he concluded there wasn't enough evidence in this case. So the judges, this district is one of the premier districts in our country. They handle most of our national security criminal cases. They take great pride in their professionalism. So I'm looking to see what the judges here do. I think, I suspect, my prediction is we're going to see the government on defense, on its heels very quickly in this case.
Scott Frederickson, thank you so much for taking the time.
Of course.